pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry we were a little late there. Welcome, everybody. First order of business is roll call.
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Jackson?
Here.
Mr. Kern?
Here.
Mr. McCucci?
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Here.
Mr. Akmanowitz?
Here.
Mrs. Weed?
Here.
Mr. DiLiberto? Mr. Klein?
Here. Thank you, Madam Secretary. There was an executive session prior to this meeting to discuss a personnel matter. So moving on, the first item of business is approval of the minutes from our October 11th, 2018 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kern and Mr. Anderson. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes unanimously, which brings us to the first public comment of the evening. Madam Secretary, do you have anybody that signed up?
Julia Henry?
My name is Julia Henry, and I am an 8th grade student at Strayer Middle School. Thank you for having me here tonight. Would you prefer that I tell you about myself or that I just dive right into why I'm here?
Whatever you would like to do.
Okay, thank you. I'm busy at Strayer. I take advanced classes including geometry, honors ELA, and Spanish too. I'm involved in a lot of extracurriculars activities at Strayer. I was inducted into the National Junior Honor Society last year as a 7th grader. 2 years ago, I was selected as one of the 4 6th graders for the Strayer Wind Symphony, and this is now my 3rd year in Wind Symphony. I'm in chorus. I am a voracious reader and a member of the Strayer Reading Olympics team. We won the blue ribbon in the 2018 Bucks County Reading Olympics competition. I play basketball, softball, and volleyball. I love sports. I am an avid Eagles fan. I read a lot of sports articles every day. I wake up and go to sleep listening to sports talk radio and sports games. I'm a member of the Strayer Music Theater Academy, and in 6th grade, I was Zazu in The Lion King Jr. Last year, I was Tall Alice in Alice in Wonderland Jr. We'll perform Mary Poppins Jr. on January 24th, 25th, and 26th. Hope you can make it. I'm also a Girl Scout, and so far, I've attained the Bronze Award. I'm a member of Strayer's International Club. I was recently elected president of the club, which leads into my reason for speaking here tonight. So that you can put a face with a name, I'm the student that has been asking and begging to learn French since I was 3 years old. Every one of us has dreams and goals, and I can honestly tell you that my dream, passion, and goal for almost my entire life has been to learn French in a classroom with my peers. My mom used to teach in a middle school, and when I was younger, she would tell me, when you get to middle school, you can learn French. At the end of 4th grade, I found out that QCSD does not offer French. Every other school district in Bucks and Montgomery County offers French. To say I was crushed doesn't convey the magnitude to what I felt. My dream came to a crashing halt. So that June, when I finished 4th grade, my mom contacted our new superintendent, Dr. Harner, to ask him about the possibility of adding French to the QCSD curriculum. He said it was not his decision to make, and that the way to proceed would be to speak to the school board. My mom spoke at several school board meetings. At those school board meetings, my mom was told to attend an education and curriculum committee meeting, which she then attended. My parents had contacted the Honorary Consul of France to Philadelphia, Michael Skolem, and on August 10, 2017, he spoke to the board about the distinct benefits of French language instruction, including the fact that studying French improves standardized test scores by over 50%, and because almost 50% of our English language is derived directly from French, and how French companies have over 520 locations in Pennsylvania, and France is ranked number 2 for number of jobs currently provided in Pennsylvania by international businesses. second only to England and ahead of number 3 Germany. At that meeting, my mom and Mr. Skolin were told that there is not enough interest in French in this district. However, Dr. Harner agreed to conduct a world language interest survey at Strayer. Last school year, on November 13, 2017, all QCSD 6th and 7th graders were given an online world language survey. There were 3 survey questions. What is your first choice of a world language next year, your second choice, and your third choice? It was a drop-down menu with French, German, Mandarin, and Spanish all listed as options. My mom asked for the survey results many times. Dr. Harner shared the survey results with my mom on February 6, 2018. Based on those survey results, which showed there is a significant interest in French in QCSD, a letter dated February 23, 2018, was mailed to all 6th and 7th grade students, stating that 4 world languages would be offered for the 2018-2019 school year at Strayer: Spanish, German, Mandarin, and French. The letter requested students to select their choice of world language and return the form by March 7, 2018. In response to that letter, 58 students that are currently 7th and 8th graders at Strayer selected French 1 as their language of choice during the course selection process. 58 students. To put it in perspective, picture 58 middle school students sitting here in 58 of those chairs. To be fully transparent, only 28 students selected German 1, 11 students selected German 2, 38 students selected Mandarin 1, and 7 students selected Mandarin 2. I don't know the Spanish numbers as they were not provided to us. Again, 58 students selected French 1. Shortly after, all of our course selections were added into PowerSchool. I couldn't believe it, but 58 students were ready and excited to learn French at my school. Strayer Middle School and French 1 was actually on our schedules in PowerSchool and Canvas. Then on May 31st, 2018, Mr. Pfeiffer, who was the principal at Strayer in the 6th grade center last year, sent an email to parents stating that French 1 would not be running. Nothing was said to us as students at all. Nothing. My parents broke the news to me that French 1 was canceled. The next day at school during lunch, a guidance counselor went around to all 58 students at our lunch tables to find out our second choice of world language. And that was it. Even though 58 students signed up and were enthusiastic and ready to learn French, much more than German or Mandarin, French was suddenly canceled. A few weeks later, this past summer, my parents and I met with Dr. Harner and Miss Edwards to express our concerns. At that meeting, we were told that despite their attempt to add French 1 to the curriculum, there was never a true, viable plan. In an effort to be fully transparent, I'm here to say that that was devastating and confusing to hear. I like to think that there is always a plan, but to hear that there was no plan beyond offering French 1 at Strayer is upsetting, disappointing, and frustrating. How did the course offering letter get mailed to our homes without a plan? How did French 1 get added on to 58 student schedules only to have the plug pulled? I'm here because as an 8th grader, I wanted you to hear from me personally. I'm interested in what you know as the school board about what has happened to date and what is being planned for French 1 at the high school, given the undeniable benefits of French, the fact that every other school district in Bucks and Montgomery County offers French, and the high student interest in French in this district. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Henry.
Awesome.
Any other public comment? Okay, we'll move into the superintendent report. Okay. Brings us to our student representative report, and tonight we have Mr. Jacob Lewis. So, sir, the mic is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jake Lewis. I'm currently a junior at the high school, and I'm on the swim team and the lacrosse team. I'm also involved with Key Club and Future Business Leaders of America, and hopefully National Honor Society. This is my first time being a student rep for the school board, but now for all what you really want to hear, what's going on at the high school. I'm a big sports guy, so that's what I'm going to talk about first. After tomorrow, all fall sports besides football will officially be wrapped up. The cross-country team is headed off to the District 1 Championship tomorrow, which will be their last race of the season. The football team is currently 7-2 with a game against Kennett High School tomorrow. This could help or hurt our playoff standings, which start 2 weeks from tomorrow. Fall sports coming to a close means that winter sports are right around the corner. Teams are starting to have meetings during prides or after school, so students should listen to the morning announcements for dates and times. Somehow, we're almost a quarter of the way through the school year already. Time is flying by, and the first marking period ends on November 7th. PSATs were held on October 10th for all 10th graders and any 11th graders who chose to take them. The SATs will be held at the high school on December 1st. The junior class recently held elections for president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and public relations. The sophomore class will be having their elections soon. 2 students in 11th grade recently attended a student forum at CB West High School, where they met with around 12 other schools to discuss pressing topics in youth and in schools, such as gambling, poverty, etc. They will be meeting monthly to discuss these topics. The homecoming dance is next weekend on Saturday, November 3rd. The theme is A Night in Paris. Students seem to be really looking forward to it. The homecoming king and queen will be announced at halftime of the Thanksgiving Day football game. Fundraising is now starting for Minithon, which is a fundraiser for pediatric cancer held in the spring. This past Monday, the high school held a blood drive event with Miller Keystone Blood Bank. It appears that a lot of students participated. Today, there was a meeting for Quakertown First Responders Club. There was an open house with the police department, St. Luke's, and the fire department. It's not too late to sign up. I'm excited to announce that the high school will be starting a debate club. The general interest meeting was today, but again, it's not too late to sign up. Tomorrow, Mr. Burke and Officer Lee will be holding voluntary Alice counter training sessions in the wrestling room. These sessions are meant to educate students on how to handle and properly respond to intruder situations. Tomorrow is also the last day to sign up for Ski Club. This club takes trips on Thursdays after school to Blue Mountain. The high school band will be attending state championships this weekend at Westchester University. We wish them luck. On Friday, November 9th, there will be a co-ed volleyball tournament after school. We are hoping for a large turnout to benefit the boys' volleyball team. Powder Puff teams are starting to practice for the big event on November 13th at Alumni Field. Students are very excited for this competition, as always. Rehearsal for the school play, Arsenic and Old Lace, is in full swing now, and performances are scheduled for November 15th and 16th. Any student interested in travel should attend the travel club meetings discussing opportunities in the spring and summer. There will be trips to Switzerland, Munich, and Spain. Best Buddies is starting to meet regularly, and this week they painted pumpkins for Halloween. Additionally, the Panther Cafe is now offering exclusive Panther travel mugs for $3.95. The students can now enjoy 16 rather than 12 ounces of hot Wawa coffee for $1.45. As you might assume, we're all very excited about this. And to wrap it up, while we're here at the high school board meeting, parents may be attending the FAFSA meeting at the high school. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. That's all I have. Thank you.
That was an excellent report, sir. You mentioned earlier that you were a member of the FBLA.
Yes.
What are your goals with that, if I may ask?
Well, that's a good question. Well, right now, it's my first year in the club. I am the reporter for the club, so that means that I kind of not take notes on meetings, but kind of just summarize what we do at meetings and also events that the club takes part in, and kind of present that through different ways. I'm interested in finance, so that's something that I'm looking to try to do with the club, like an event in finance. And right now we're in the process of picking our events.
Great, great. Well, when you get all schooled up on finance, we could use you, okay?
Sounds good.
And the gentleman to your right there, not to your immediate right, but is, next to the person to your immediate right, as you probably are aware, is Mr. Gary Wexelblatt, who is a reporter. So if you need any tips, he's the guy. Yeah, it's
Okay.
your left, excuse me.
I knew what you meant. It's okay.
That's why everybody was laughing. Okay, but yeah, definitely get with Gary. I'm sure he can give you some good tips there.
Jacob, could you please talk about what you did last summer for a week?
Oh, yes. Last summer, well, this past summer, I attended Pennsylvania Free Enterprise Week, which is, I mean, it stands for PFU. It's a business camp held at Lycoming College out in Williamsport, and it teaches students about the free enterprise system and kind of the ins and outs of a business. We were put into companies, and our peers elect a CEO and a CFO to help run the companies. I was elected CFO, and I was very happy about that, as I'm interested in finance. And we take part in a business simulation where we take over a failing manufacturing company, and we have to make quarterly decisions for a 3-year period. They fit a 3-year period of quarterly decisions into about 3 days of the week-long camp. So they're long days with a lot of decisions, but it was a really cool camp, and I learned a lot. They had a lot of speakers come in from all different areas. There were CEOs, and there were just motivational speakers, and it really opened my eyes, not just to how to run a business, but also just kind of how to treat people and how common courtesy can go a long way. And it was such a great experience.
How many Quakertown students were with you?
At the specific week I was at, there were 3 other Quakertown students, but in total, there were, I want to say, 8 Quakertown students that attended the camp. Because it's a camp that's a week long, but there's 4 one-week-long sessions. So.
And the big question, how did your company do?
Well, my company, on the first night, we're put in a room, and there's just a tarp down with a bunch of junk on it, and it's called junk night, like it is junk. The people said that they just cleaned out their garages and brought in whatever, but we have to literally build a product and then market it to the judges and give like a live presentation. And I helped, I kind of led that presentation, and our team, or our company, won Best Presentation. So
Great.
that was, we were happy about that.
Awesome. Very good. Well, thank you so much for coming and for your report. If you need to skip out to do homework or anything like that, feel free, or you can stay.
All right, I'm here to stay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to the standing committee reports. We'll start with the policy committee report. Mrs. Weed.
We did not meet, so we have nothing to report.
A quick report it was. Okay, next would be the finance committee meeting. Mr. McCucci, I know you guys met because I was there.
So we have a presentation to give. Do we want to go first with that, or want me to go through the finance report?
Up to you.
So Zach, do you want to introduce our presentation from Locked In?
Sure.
Which is a healthcare consortium that Quakertown's a part of. So.
Yeah, so we were originally going to do this presentation in finance, but had too many other things on the agenda, so we decided to move it into the regular board meeting. Bob Russell is here from Locked In. They're the consultant for the Bucks and Montgomery County Healthcare Consortiums, which we are a member district of. Also here is Lynn Morgan. She's the labor trustee for the district on that in that consortium, so she's attending as well. So if Bob, if you want to come on up, the podium's yours. And your presentation should be, yep, it's queued up there.
Okay, so I put this together. Really what this is intended to do is give you a background on what's been happening within the consortium, and we're doing this with, you guys are actually our guinea pig. Thank you to Zach. We're going to be doing this with each of the school boards for the member school entities within the consortium. Feel free to stop me with any questions as I go through this too. So in terms of, the vendor partners, Aetna is providing the medical coverage, CVS Health is providing the pharmacy coverage. In addition to that, some of the school entities also have their dental program that runs through the consortium, and that's with Delta Dental. There's a wellness program that is actually the new one just launched August 1st, and that is with Asset Health. And also August 1st, the consortium launched a price transparency tool where members can actually earn a cash incentive that gets paid to them if they select a high-quality, low-cost facility for their procedure, and that's through Healthcare Blue Book. In terms of the fund professionals, as Zach said, I'm from Lockton Companies. We're the fund consultant. In addition to that, AMCA Systems does all of the administrative work around eligibility and getting people enrolled in the programs. And then Cozen O'Connor is the fund counsel, and that's Fred D'Angelo. In terms of the structure and governance, there's currently 12 school entities in the consortium. The board is made up of trustees from those 12. So there's equal number management labor. So everything within the consortium is equal representation, including the steering committee, which basically provides oversight for the consortium. The consortium meets on a monthly basis, so the steering committee was designed to move projects along in between the monthly meetings. And that, again, has equal representation between management and labor. In terms of the guiding principles, these were pretty much created when the consortium was first formed about 6 years ago, and the consortium really has held to these. Their number one goal is to manage and control the rising cost of healthcare. Obviously, it's in the news, everyone hears about it. Everything the consortium has done has been to try to bring that cost down and make it more manageable and more of a budgetable item. They also are trying to develop new and innovative health plan designs. The big push right now is also to educate the members and make them better educated members in terms of how they go out and obtain their health care. Obviously, because of the Health Care Reform Act, there's lots of legislation that has to be complied with. The consortium makes sure that each of the participating school entities are in compliance. And more importantly, since the consortium has been formed, on a cumulative basis, the overall savings has been roughly $67 million across those 6 years. Okay. In terms of advantages of participating in the consortium, there's 100% data transparency. A lot of the school entities, when they joined the consortium, were on the smaller side. They weren't getting their claims data, so they had no idea what was driving up their healthcare costs. In the consortium, every month, every school entity gets a report that shows their claim dollars. They get utilization reports that they can look at and see what is actually driving up their healthcare costs. There's also purchasing efficiency. Because of the size of the consortium, they have one of the lowest administrative fees in the area. The more lives you have under a program, the less the vendors are going to charge you on a per employee per month basis. They also created the 4 preferred plans. So over the course of the past couple of years, all of the school entities have migrated their members to one of the 4 plans that are offered. One of the biggest advantages, and quite honestly, the sole reason a lot of these things have been able to be accomplished is the fact that it's joint management labor. So every decision, every topic that is discussed, labor's at the table. The addition of the 4th medical plan that happened last year was huge for the consortium. And basically what it meant is that that was decided at the consortium level, and it took that off of the bargaining table back and forth at each school entity. Okay. One of the things that the consortium has also been looking at is to try to keep the healthcare increase at a budgetable amount for everybody within the consortium. What we saw is that some schools would have huge fluctuations year to year in their budget. So one of the things that the consortium has done, they started it last year and then we're moving into the second year of this, is we basically developed a new model to help pool the overall experience and provide more of an even playing field for everybody. So basically what happens is each school entity got to pick a dollar amount that they basically said they could absorb. So I'm just going to pick a sample one. One of the levels is $200,000. So basically what that means is for every single member, as claims get accumulated through the year, the first $200,000 is charged to the school entity's balance. Everything over that goes into what we're calling the common pool. So each school entity is making a contribution to the common pool, and then at the end of the year, that gets reconciled. That's one piece of the pooling. The other piece that we're doing is to help mitigate on the back end the big budget fluctuations. There's a blending of the renewals between the school entity and the total consortium. So we're moving, we're actually in the second year of that pooling. We're about to start releasing, actually next month will be the first budget projections. And for that year, it will be a blending. 2/3 of the renewal will be based on the whole consortium, and 1/3 will be based on just the school entity. Next year's budget, it will be based 100% on how the whole consortium is running. The reason that's going to be important, and it's on a future slide, is when we looked at what was happening for the consortium, in total, it was running several points below industry average for cost increases. So we're trying to get all of the schools to benefit from that instead of having those big budget fluctuations. Let's see. Sorry, go to the next one. Okay. I won't bore you with the details of the plans, but this is just a side-by-side of the 4 medical plans that are offered. Within the consortium, everybody has one of these plans for the medical. On the pharmacy, there's still a lot more variance in the plans, and school entities can negotiate those on their own. And then this is just an overview of the pharmacy plan that Quakertown currently has. One of the things, we have preferred plans that were developed by the consortium, but there's not a mandate to move to those like there was on the medical. So at any time, a school entity can contact us as the fund consultant and say, we want to look at the preferred plans, and then we'll show them what the cost impact would be for that. I'm going to jump to, okay, so this page. This shows the 3-year renewal average for Quakertown versus the consortium. So we did this back starting in 2015, and you can see for the total consortium on a 3-year, the total increase was just under 3% per year, which is well below what we're seeing out in the marketplace, and honestly, much lower than a lot of the schools were seeing before they joined the consortium. Okay, and then this shows for the 2018-2019 plan year, that was the first year of that pooling between the blending with the consortium and the standalone. And I just wanted to highlight for Quakertown how it helped Quakertown from a budget standpoint. Quakertown on their own would have been at 13.2. The whole consortium was lower than that. And so by blending, the actual cost increase for Quakertown was a couple percentage points lower than what their standalone would be. The other savings that comes to each of the school entities, and this page just highlights specific for Quakertown, I mentioned because of the size, we get one of the lowest administrative fees. So we looked at what the administrative fee is through the consortium and then what it would be for Quakertown if they were to go out on their own just as a standalone entity. And the annual savings on that is about $32,000. The other piece is on the stop loss. So that's that internal pooling that I mentioned versus if you were to go out into the open market. And the savings on that alone is about $720,000. Okay, so I mentioned we have a wellness program. It's been revamped a couple times. So the latest program is more of an incentive program. So it's rewarding people if they're going out and doing their preventive screenings. That's with Asset Health. We're really trying to promote, again, to have the members be well educated about how to access care, what they need to do to maintain their health. Obviously, the goal with any wellness program is to hopefully catch things early and prevent them becoming a large claim down the road. Just last week at the consortium meeting, the trustees voted to add Teladoc into all of the medical programs. So this, again, it's a convenience for members. So this allows them to just call it, and it's the call goes to an accredited doctor. They can take the information over the phone. If they have the capability to do video, they can also do it through video. This is intended for the routine type things. You think you have a child with an ear infection, you have a sinus infection, that sort of thing. They do have the ability to write a script as well. So it really prevents, if the member doesn't want to wait at a doctor's office, they get a call within just a few minutes. So it really is a convenience for the member, and it's also a lower claim cost for the school entity for those members. And then I mentioned the transparency tools. That's with a company called Healthcare Blue Book. This was just launched August 1st, and this provides, if somebody, if they there's two ways they can earn the incentive. If they actually go out on what they call shop, which is go out to the website, pull up the procedure, and it shows all the facilities in the area. If they go to a high-quality, low-cost facility, they will actually get a check mailed to them. Even if they don't shop, if somebody just, not randomly, but if somebody just goes to that particular facility without going onto the website, the incentive is still being paid because it lowers the claim dollars back to the school entity. And I know I whipped through that really fast, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
You guys shop plans for the consortium?
You mean in terms of vendors?
Yeah.
Yes, so actually, the way the consortium operates on the medical and pharmacy, every 3 years, the medical and pharmacy vendor is basically put out to bid. So for this upcoming, for July of 2019, the pharmacy is out to bid. The last time the medical was out to bid is when the change was made from IBC to Aetna.
And these benefits are based on our contract with our unions.
Right.
These benefits can't be changed until the contract negotiations.
Right. Yep.
Do all the other schools have benefits equal or comparable? Are they all in the same 4 plans?
Yes, on the medical, everybody has the same 4 plans. That's part of what everybody agreed to migrate to when they joined the consortium. On the pharmacy, each school entity, we have preferred plans, but we didn't mandate that they had to migrate to them. So each school entity has their own. So we probably are managing about 60 different pharmacy plans at this point.
How much is the copay for the doctors for the teledoc benefit? I'm just curious.
The consortium, it's actually free. There's no copay to the member.
That's
And
nice.
again, the reason that was done was to incent people to use it because on the back end, the cost that gets charged as a claim is much less than if somebody goes to a primary care or an urgent care.
I've used it before. It's pretty good. Yeah.
Yep.
These are going to build your own wellness program amongst the schools.
Yep. Yep.
How are you guys going to do that? Are you working with like Doylestown Hospital or Abington's?
No, Asset Health is the wellness vendor. So right now, the wellness program is focused on getting people to go out and do their preventive care. It was just revamped. It used to be, last year and even before that, it was if you went and got your biometric screening, you got a certain dollar amount. What we're trying to do is get people to start doing the preventive stuff that, we've, in the utilization reports, we see there are gaps in care. Men don't like going to the doctor usually, so men aren't getting their annual physicals. And so we're trying to focus there, and then we'll build from there. But whatever gets put in as the wellness program is for all 12 schools.
Okay.
Bob, I just want to add on the wellness piece. Lynn Morgan, who is the labor trustee, and Anita Caseman actually run the wellness at the district level. So when we get the things from the consortium and it comes back to the district level, the two of them work together to actually implement whatever the initiative might be.
That's any other questions for the board? From the board? All right.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So other items we discussed in the Finance Committee were Act 1 exception calculations. So as you know, last year, we qualified for 1.9 million in special education exceptions. The board approved a 4.2% millage increase, which took us partially over, took us over Act 1, which was 2.8% last year to 2.8% last year. We added the 1.4%. We got our 4.2%. So this year, last meeting, we had a discussion about opting out, and tonight on the agenda is a resolution. The initial speculation was around 100K would be what we thought we would be able to qualify for. But after they did some additional calculations, it looks like we qualify for approximately 500K. So Act 1 this year, they thought was about 2.8%. It's 2.7%. And if we were to take the exceptions, it would increase us to 3.4%. But after some discussion, I think at the finance level, we all sort of agree that delta, the difference between the 500,000, wouldn't factor in to a large change in our budgetary operations. And so the Finance Committee unanimously approved staying at Act 1 and opting out. We'll be voting on that tonight, everybody. Did I say that right, Zach? Anything that I missed? Impact on revenues, let's talk about, we just talked about that. So recent bond refinance, we discussed that last year, February 22nd of 2018. This board approved refinancing our bonds. They went out to the market October 11th. UBS Financial Services won the bid, resulting in $251,000 savings on our debt services, which we will appreciate this year. We'll be voting tonight on a new Forecast 5 analytic tool, which we reviewed last time in our Finance Committee. This was a tool that sort of affords us some transparency, not only as a district, but across the state with our finances, and allows us to compare ourselves to districts across the state. And it's for anybody who publicly reports that has to publicly submit their data. One of the things that we challenged administration with was sort of transparency, and I know that a lot of us are on emails often talking about the budgets and asking about certain line items and what our costs are relative to other districts. And so I think this tool affords us a great opportunity to look at this at a much higher level, but then we can drill in where necessary. That looks like this year alone, if we approved it, it would be a $30K to the operations over 2 years, $30,000 to the operating budget, $12K this year and $18K next year. I do want to point out that I think that, with reduced work in our administration, we can count that as sort of offsetting this cost, because I know, there's hours upon hours that our administration is digging into some of our questions just to try to get the answers. And I think for the public, I think that you'll have a better appreciation when we show you some of the graphs. How does Quakertown compare to other school districts, both in size and from a financial standpoint? So I think it's a really promising tool. And we can set up all kinds of dashboards and stuff like that, so you can see real time where your spending's, which I think is also a huge bonus. We locked into our fuel bids for this year. So I guess as part of the Bucks County IU, districts are able to lock in fuel costs, and our administration locked in. So to give you an example, our gas, we get it for a rate of about $2.28, and our diesel fuel, which we use upwards of 87,000 gallons, we got for $2.17 a gallon. So that's basically the highlight of our meeting. Did I miss anything, guys? Any questions? Anybody? All right. That's my report.
Great report, sir. Thank you. Next up is the Bucks County Intermediate Unit, Mr. Jackson. And before you start, Mr. Jackson, let me publicly wish you a happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
And I'm sure that you're doing just what you want to do, which is being at a school board meeting on your birthday.
Sadly, that might be true, but
Oh, you need a better social life. That's unfair. That's unfortunate.
That's right. The IU met last Tuesday, the 16th. I've included in the board docs the awesome news, the highlight of all the different things that are going on down there, as well as the board digest list, which is all the various approvals we had at that time. There's really nothing earth-shattering to discuss, so that's my report on the IU.
Why don't you segue into the legislative report next?
And the legislative report. I've included the legislative report that we get every month from the IU. It's public content. I hope the public was also interested in seeing how Harrisburg has attempted to screw up our schools even more. But, I mean, I always laughed. It's actually in there, the sunscreen law, which literally there's a law they had to pass that permits students to apply their own sunscreen without doctor's assistance. Yeah. So that's what Harrisburg is working on for you. As well, Mr. Anderson and I went out to the PSBA Leadership Forum last Friday, where the PSBA, which is, for those who don't know, the Pennsylvania School Board Association, passed their legislative agenda. That's what the School Board Association is going to lobby Harrisburg for, passing certain laws that benefit school districts. That's available on their website. I didn't post it. It's public access to that, to see that. Nothing earth-shattering there as well. So that's what's going on legislatively.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. And last but not least is the Upper Bucks County Technical School report. Mr. Achmanowitz.
Not least, indeed. October Student of the Month at Quakertown is a Quakertown student, Brianna DiGiacomo. She's a senior who not only is an artist, but has a natural instinct for welding, so she was recognized. We had a facilities committee meeting, and during that meeting we discussed a proposed sewer treatment contract between Upper Bucks County Technical School and the PADCNR. It's been placed on a later agenda after some additional research can be done. We had a finance committee meeting as well. We discussed an ongoing conversation about the funding model of the contributions from the 3 sending schools. Roughly the amount due is a 5-year rolling average. There was mention of the informal agreement made many boards ago back to set any funding request at Act 1. And so the agreement had been in place since the 1960s. That's what I meant when I said that far back. The projections suggest right now that it may be time to consider another funding model to implement over many years with respect to the school's capital fund. And by the school's capital fund, I mean the tech school. We received some great donations from EP Henry. They donated $2,200 in paving stone for a project, as well as Stone Depot, which was responsible for contributing about $2,800 worth of products for the school. The policy committee met and we discussed the school's comprehensive plan, projecting our goals and commitments over the next 3 years. Some of the agricultural students will be attending the Pennsylvania Farm Show in Harrisburg this January. We approved the household hazardous waste collection site proposal from the BC Planning Commission for a date of June 1st, 2019. The tech school has an open house for all interested parties scheduled for November 8th, and it will be from 5:30 to 7:30. The next JOC meeting is scheduled for November 15th at 7. JOC board meetings are recorded by a community member, and they are available on YouTube if anybody is interested. That concludes my report, sir.
Thank you, sir. Well done. That moves us into the public comment on the fiscal items being presented for a vote tonight.
Chris Spear, Milford Township. I think you all got my email. I hope you read it. I'm sorry, Miss Weed, I texted you to remind you to read it, and then I butt dialed you later. While I was putting my daughter to bed, my phone.
I can assure you I read it.
Okay. So I'm going to try not to say too much of the stuff that was in that letter, but really sort of hit on a couple points that are real important about why I put that letter out. That I believe it's, I'm not even going to read. I believe it's going to be a really important vote that you make tonight, and not just about the schools. I mean, as much as you think I've been fighting to save Milford all this time, you know, at this point, I would almost say I would rather see it torn down, even though I would love to see Faith Christian use this school and utilize it, because I think it is still a good building. I just think that the risk is too great that down the road, either vouchers could be approved, and we're really one governor election away from that happening, or they could sell it to someone else later, and that could become a charter. And, I know Mr. Garten did say that you were going to work out some things in the agreement of sale, but along with the first right of refusal. But, if Faith Christian buys this school and sinks $12 million into it, and then they go, okay, well, we don't have all our funding, we didn't get as many students as we want to sell it, they're going to sell it back to us, not for the $2 million we sold it to them for probably what they put into it. And then say in 5 or 6 years, can we afford to buy a $14 million school back? Probably not. The next thing is any deed restrictions. So I looked into a lot of how school districts have been trying to prevent charter schools from utilizing their old buildings. And I keep seeing these things where school districts are putting deed restrictions on that land, and they keep losing that in courts. The courts are throwing all those away. So that's not a very good protection to protect that. So if during this agreement of sale, you work out some type of deed restriction that says this can't be used for a charter school or something like that down the line, this will probably get thrown out in court. And I have dozens of cases where it's happened now. So, that really worries me. And one case in Detroit was real important too, because it wasn't the first owner that the school district sold it to, it was the second owner. They had one of their elementary schools up for sale, and then a real estate developer bought it to turn it into condos. Their funding fell through. They then put it on the market, and a charter came in to buy it. The charter came in to buy it. It had a deed restriction on it. They took it to court, and the court said that deed restriction should be nullified because it's against the law. It's against Michigan law. So they threw that out. So even the second owner got beat past that deed restriction. I'm not exactly sure about Faith Christian's business plan, but these two schools are offering 800 seats available to them. I don't know if they have that much expansion that quickly in them, that if they don't have enough funding to fill those schools, I could perfectly see them wanting to sell one of them down the road. And seeing how these court cases went, how these deed restrictions are thrown out in courts, I don't believe we'd be protected enough. And I think that $2 million that we would make selling those schools should be considered an insurance policy against a charter school coming in. These charter schools cost $16,000 to $23,000 per student, and that's the numbers I got. I'm sure you have better numbers than that. But, I really don't want to see our school district whittled away $16,000 at a time because a charter comes in, and we thought we were protected by putting deed restrictions or a first right of refusal of sale in, and it did not protect us. And that very well could happen here. And like I said, $2 million to $110 million budget is a really good insurance policy, I think, at keeping that away. And right now, if vouchers were passed, we have 500 kids right now in this school district in religious or private schools that aren't charter schools. If all of those students instantly got vouchers for us, it would cost us $9 million. So take $9 million every year out of our budget. We wouldn't be able to even afford that. And we're one governor election away from that. So if Scott Wagner wins, he already said this is what he's for. If Scott Wagner wins, Faith Christian even gets that money. St. Isidore's gets that money. Every religious school gets that charter money. So we really need to protect ourselves. And like I said, I hate to say it, but, I did have one other option. Sorry to change my sin. A triple net lease could be the only way that we could allow Faith Christian to use these schools but still maintain control over it, in that you lease it to them and lease it for a real low amount, way below market value, like $2, $3 a square foot, something like that. I'm coming. This is real easy. But then put an escalator clause in there to say if vouchers do pass or if Faith Christian starts getting money from Quakertown School District for its students, then that lease price goes way up to maybe $20 a square foot. So that would cover the losses that Quakertown would get, but only if they would agree to a triple net lease. And you could sign a triple net lease for a 20 or 30-year contract. But like I said, I don't believe any type of deed restriction or first right of refusal is enough protection to protect the school district from this. So
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Spear.
you.
Thank you, Chris.
Any other public comment? Okay, that moves us to the fiscal agenda. We have two basic items on here. Each will be a roll call vote. The first is the sale agreement with the Faith Christian Academy for Milford Middle School and Tahican Valley Elementary. And the second is the Act 1 budget opt-out resolution. So do I have a motion to accept the fiscal agenda as presented?
Are we discussing it?
Yes.
Before? Okay. Second.
Jackson?
I'll second it.
Mr. Anderson, discussion.
Attorney Garten, I have several questions. I'm not a real estate attorney, and I could not justify getting on Westlaw and charging it to some of my hospital clients. I'm sure Keith appreciates that, since we represent Lehigh Valley Hospital. But on the contract, which I was looking at last night, I had two paragraphs here. One was paragraph 23 in the red line draft, but it's on the printed draft we got tonight. It's paragraph 24 under brokerage. And there is a finder's fee of 2.4% Remax. I wanted to ask you about that. Or Zach?
Mr. Shuck about that.
Okay, Mr. Shuck, can you explain that to me?
Yeah, sure. Their offer was $2 million. That is above and beyond that because they used a realtor on their end. So that 2.4% goes to their realtor. It doesn't impact what the district would be getting in terms of their offer to us, which was the $2 million.
Okay, so that goes to the realtor for Faith Christian.
Yes.
Okay. Then my second question, which is maybe to Mr. Shuck or Attorney Garten, is on paragraph 25 under expenses on the hard copy we've got. It says that there's 50% of any cost in excess of $2,000 for our attorney's fees, but I saw that Faith Christian has an attorney as well. Why isn't just both parties paying their fees? And are we doing it all?
Well, Zach negotiated that benefit for the agreement, so they are contributing to our costs.
Okay, so, but we're only getting 50%.
Yeah, well,
Can you address that too?
So they're paying our attorney's fees for up to $2,000, anything above $2,000, and it was really for the cost to draft the agreement, which is what Mr. Garten did. I wanted our attorney to draft the agreement, not their attorney, since Mr. Garten's much more familiar with school law and things of that nature.
All right, thank you. And then I'm going to finish here in a few seconds. I just had a couple more questions, Attorney Garten. Under the deed restriction, I thought that Mr. Spears raised some good issues. Again, I didn't research this on my own. But what is Pennsylvania law, if you can tell me, on the deed restriction and how that would be upheld? Because I frankly have the same concerns. If we get a Republican governor here in 2 weeks and suddenly vouchers are...
there are no guarantees in the law, as you know, but my research indicates there's been no cases in appellate courts in Pennsylvania that have reversed a deed restriction. And in fact, if you look at the school code, there's reverter provisions in the school code related to the transfer of property by schools to municipalities and the like. But I'm not here to give you a guarantee.
Right. Have we ever had the legislature pass vouchers before, though? I mean, I'm thinking the legislature might trump, anything that would come out. Yeah.
We have not had any voucher legislation approved as yet. We also, if you remember, we had that legislation that was pending that said if you had a vacant building, you had to offer it to a charter school. That didn't pass. But you're right, never can tell what may happen after an election. But we have not had any voucher legislation adopted other than the charter school legislation.
Okay, but if it were adopted, wouldn't the voucher legislation take precedence over anything coming out of the courts?
I call it subsidies in the agreement because there's no other way of describing all those possibilities. Clearly, the legislature could adopt a law that would trump, I hate to use that word. But
Yeah, please, don't we all? But yeah, go ahead.
precedence over some contractual agreement that exists.
Usurp.
Usurp is good.
Well, I didn't hear that last comment.
Usurp, he said. He gave you a new word instead of, yeah. Can I ask one more question, legally based on your experience? Paragraph 36 on the right of first refusal, have those provisions been litigated in the Pennsylvania courts?
Yes. And
Okay.
they have been deemed to be valid. Could be
Okay.
just consideration.
And that's true for every appellate court decision, or?
Well, they're fact-driven, but
Mhm.
if you have consideration and there's even-handed negotiations and both parties enter that agreement with full knowledge of the consequences, they've been ratified and confirmed.
And then my last question, I promise this is the last one, is to Mr. Shook. On the furniture and fixtures, it looks like we're giving Faith Christian the furniture, no additional monies?
So the furniture excludes, obviously, any personal furniture. I believe we put in there the kitchen equipment, which is of value, and any technology. The rest of the stuff in there is old desks, old chairs. There's really no value to those things. We did a lot of research. You might get $2 a chair, $3 a chair. That was part of our give back for them leasing Hidden Valley back to us for a year and a half to 2 year period. We gave that as well as we'll continue to cut the grass as long as we lease for both buildings, as long as we lease to Hidden Valley Elementary
Okay.
School.
And then I lied, I have one more question. Is St. Luke's still interested in Tohickon Valley?
So I did speak with them, and they indicated nothing has changed on their end. So I would take that as yes. The individual I spoke to also said they have not had any additional conversations with their team since the last time he and I spoke. So
Did you discuss a lease with them, like a year, waiting a year?
yeah, they were also they actually submitted a letter of intent, which I presented to the board. I don't know, maybe a month or two ago from them as well. They were willing to lease it back to us. The difference there, and I might have this slightly wrong, but since they're a hospital, they're a nonprofit, but if they're using a building not as a hospital, they'd have to pay taxes. They wanted that factored in, that they wouldn't have to pay those taxes, or we would offset those taxes if they were to lease it back to us.
I know the attorney for St. Luke's, if that helps, but.
You got to know the tax man for that one.
Yeah, I'm sure I don't know tax, but I do know their in-house counsel. Okay, thank you.
Is that true? They'd have to pay taxes if we were occupying the building, even though we're we're a government entity, we're not for profit, right?
Well, because you're a tenant and they're receiving income. However, you can't abate the taxes, but you can refund the tax through a reduction in rent or some other factor that would work. But you can't not tax them. Because they're the entity receiving theoretically rent.
So the district could refund it via school tax, like credit or something? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Does that work the same with Faith Christian? Either one, if they, with Tohickon Valley?
Because they're a nonprofit, so they don't pay tax irrespective of whether there's a district participation in that.
Okay.
So regarding the sales agreement with Faith Christian, any other discussions?
So I'm just, so I want to understand correctly, if we have the right of first refusal, because it does sound like, I'm trying to just understand in my brain the level of risk here. So, and I think the voucher situation is, outside of this situation with Faith Christian, could be obviously devastating to the public school system here. We'd have to make a lot of changes. But outside of that, since we have the right of first refusal, and let's just say it played out in court that they, the deed restriction as far as the use of a charter school, they were to win that, their only option would be, in that case, they could lease it out to, I guess, a charter school, but they wouldn't be able to sell it unless they offer to us first.
Correct.
Okay. And your, opinion, would you say, and I haven't done a ton of research, I know that the legislature did try to put it out for a vote twice and failed to do so for the voucher situation, but do you see that in any way as being, a threat that we should really strongly consider?
Let me say that you never know what happens, and I think we can all agree to this, what happens in Harrisburg. Is it conceivable? Certainly, it hasn't happened to date. I suspect that the makeup of the legislature will change this November, but doesn't mean it won't change again. So I know there are some court cases that talk about the constitutionality of vouchers for parochial schools, so you still have the court challenge because you can't, public bodies, other than the fact that they provide for health, safety, and welfare, parochial and private schools, can't support private schools or parochial schools because of the separation of church and state, but nothing is without risk. I don't think it's foreseeable in the near future, but there's certainly some risk.
I know I've been hearing about vouchers in Pennsylvania for 25, 30 years. And I know there's been governors that have been pro-voucher, and they've never really been able to get that up into a serious vote, so. Pardon?
There are 15 states now. There are 15 states now. Vouchers are approved.
Like a free-for-all voucher, or you mean limitations?
The biggest free-for-all, I think it has 50% of their students utilizing them.
I'll speak direct to Mr. Spear's points real quick. The issue regarding right of first refusal, you raised the question about whether or not they put $12 million into the building and then they offer it back to us at $12 million instead of $2 million. Well, if we wanted to use it as a building, we'd have to put $12 million into it, and they've already done the work for us. So we're buying a building that.
We would just buy it back to prevent it from.
Right, but the point is, that your argument is that if we decide to sell it to them, and then somewhere in the future, they bring it back, or that we want to bring it back, or they want to sell it, we have the right to buy it. At that time, I would hope the only time we'd be interested is if we want to use it. And if we wanted to use it, we wanted to be in good shape, and they would have already done the work for it, and it would have been worth that much.
Yeah, but I don't think we would want to buy it back to use it.
That's my point. That's the counter to your.
Can I make let's not have a debate. Let's have a discussion here.
But also to Kaylin's point, correct. To Kaylin's point about the voucher. To Kaylin's point about the vouchers, it doesn't matter where the school is. If vouchers come, they're going to send their kids where they want to send their kids. The fact that it's closer, you can argue that perhaps a handful of extra kids would send their kids there because it's right down the road, but I don't think that's significant enough to affect the decision tonight. If someone's going to go to a Christian school once vouchers are in place, they're going to go. The fact that it was down in Sellersville before and now it's here, again, you'll have a handful, maybe more, that will make that decision. So I don't think vouchers is even something we should be worrying about because they'll make that decision regardless.
The only other thing that was a little bit of a, red flag was I noticed that Faith Christian's enrollment was something like 415, and the capacity in these two buildings is obviously much greater than that. Is there anyone here from Faith Christian today? No? Hi. I don't know if you'd be willing to just answer a question for me, and I'm just assuming the reason why Faith Christian wants more capacity than what they would need is they are looking to grow in terms of enrollment, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Something to consider on that end too. Unlike a charter school, Faith Christian and the students that go there are not drawing dollars from our institution, okay?
Right.
So even if they do go, I mean, no offense, but we'd like to keep our students here. We have a lot more to offer stuff-wise. But to everybody's biggest concern, if they begin to draw students away, what you're going to see is an increase in, or a reduction in class sizes, which I know is a hot-button topic for a lot of people.
Right.
I'm not saying it's an ideal situation. As a district, we want to keep kids in our district. But at the same time, if families choose to send their children to this school, perception-wise, you could say it hurts. It doesn't hurt morale-wise, but it doesn't hurt us financially.
Right.
Not that that's something to hang our hat on, but, it's just a point.
No, I'm with you. I recognize that too.
So,
Mr. Shuck,
I
I'm
think we have to
sorry.
look at it from a logical standpoint. As it sits today, we have two buildings that we're not using. We're sitting on $2 million. Our expenses continue to rise. We raised taxes last year. Holding on to something for the what if in the world is a really difficult concept. And Chris, you're 100% right. What if vouchers get approved? And our business model would have to change drastically as a public school system, not because Faith Christian owns two schools in our district, but because of finances as it's going to affect us. And so I struggle with kind of this holding on to things. It's like having multiple cars and not using it. Well, what if my engine breaks and what if this? I think I could what if things to death. And I do sometimes. And I struggled with this decision. But at the end of the day, if somebody was willing to use these buildings to educate our community and even the larger community, it's not what we wanted. I didn't want these schools to be closed to begin with. I was saddened when they closed Milford. I didn't approve the closure of Tohickon Valley. It is what it is. They're closed today. We're going to move on. We're going to grow. We're going to be stronger. But I can't see holding on the property when we have debt that is huge in this community, and it will continue to rise with the expansion of Nidec approaching somewhere in the neighborhood of $28 to $30 million. So while it may be a nominal amount in some people's eyes, I don't know that anybody else is going to want to buy two empty, vacant schools, or to use them appropriately to educate students. And so I really feel strongly that owning property as a district is not what we should be about, especially when there are vacant buildings on them. We have property to build if we have to expand, and this community blows up. We have to get creative and do some other things, but I just can't see having a rainy day fund of two buildings is laying vacant that we have to worry about. Huh?
I was going to say that too, the risk
They're
of
laying vacant. Nothing's happening.
something breaking.
It's just it's sad. It's I think it's we lose a part of community, but to see it get put to some use and know that there's kids that are educated there someday. It may and if we lose a couple because they want to go to Faith Christian, then have a good time.
I want to stand up and applaud. That was very well,
Zach.
Very well spoken.
Mr. Shuck, I have a question for you relating to Faith Christian. I recall hearing, at one point in the discussions about this, that one of the reasons they wanted both buildings is that they wanted actually a separate building for their elementary students versus their older students. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I believe Tohickon Valley, they want to grow their pre-K program.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. I know they have one in Sellersville too. I'm not sure if it's an expansion on that or if it's moving that plus expanding. And then the Milford Middle School will use for their upper grades. I'm not sure what their grade structure exactly will be though.
Because then theoretically, this could allow them to grow their number of students.
Yeah, and I believe, I'm not sure if this is the question you're asking, if you take the 10-mile radius where districts have to transport it, it creates a different region for them to look to at students from, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also, if I could just ask one question, sorry, David. I think they're also leasing now instead of owning. So that's, I think, part of the big motivation is instead of renting. So it's not like they're keeping their current facility and expanding into this. I'm pretty sure it's to help offset the fact that it stinks to always be a renter, especially if your landlord, chooses actually to kick you out or something. So I think that's more important to understand is they're moving from being a renter to being a homeowner.
School owner.
Zach, the estimates for the values of these two properties, where we're selling them now for the $2 million, do they come in where the estimates are? Or was that with consideration of the fact that we were going to tear it down originally? How did the original estimates come up, and are they fair market for a vacant lot with a knockdown building, or are they fair market for a school building?
So I'm not a realtor, so I'll just answer the question based on the offer that was received based on the appraisal. So we did receive 2 appraisals on Taken Valley. One was 900,000, one was 1.3. Milford, we got 2 very, very different results. One said the building was worth $2 million. The other said, hey, the work that needs to be done in the building outweighs the value of the building, so your best option is just to sell the land and knock down the building. You'd get more money by doing that. And I believe that was, the land alone was about $1 million, so you'd have to net out whatever it would cost you to demolish the building in that situation. So they were different, closer on the TV, the 2 appraisers, different on the Milford Middle School.
So what you just explained is the rock bottom price for this price was just about $2 million for both estimates, somewhere between $2 million and $3.5 million, right? Okay. As far as the right of first refusal goes, how does this function? I mean, in-use property that is functioning is probably going to be worth more than less, especially if somebody wants to buy that property for that purpose. So in turn, we're dumping a property for $2 million that they're going to make into a functioning school. Then they're going to say, I want to sell it for $4 million. Do you want to buy it for $4 million? You know, the one building. It's now a functioning school. It's worth $4 million. So we get the right to bid on it, right? Before they have to find another seller for $4 million, and then we get the right of first refusal?
You have the right of first refusal to match a price they would get from someone else. They just can't come in and say, we want you to buy it for $10 million. You have a right to purchase whatever they can achieve by way of a third-party agreement. Or they just can't fix the price and tell you to buy it. They have to find a willing buyer, and you're permitted to match it.
That would solve our financial problem.
Well, except if they come with a willing buyer that comes in at $4 million and you have to pay $4 million. That's the scenario I think that Mr. Akmanowicz is asking about.
Have a willing buyer, however.
What if that willing
Right.
buyer falls through after our right of first refusal? Oh, we had a buyer for $4 million. You know, Quakertown had the first refusal. They said no, but our current buyer now fell through. So we could have got stuck buying a building that somebody thought that they were going to buy.
Well, once you have a right of first refusal and you choose to match the other price, there is no other agreement other than the one that would exist between the owner and the district.
So-
The other agreement would never be executed because they wouldn't have a right to sell it to that buyer because someone else has a right to buy it. It takes precedence over their right to buy it.
So they don't even need pre-approval for a loan, for example. They can just say, I want to buy that $4 million building, and then the school building district needs to be like, oh, well, I'll give you $4 million for it instead. Regardless of what happens with that other buyer, that can fall through, and we could have got put into a corner to make a tough decision.
Well, you wouldn't know it would fall through unless it was actually executed, because it would never get executed because no one would enter into the agreement on the concept that someone else is going to buy it out from under you. Obviously, there may be a condition in it that says that if the person has a right of first refusal, doesn't exercise it, here's our agreement. But chances are they're not going to go through the mortgage application process and financing process until the person that has the right of first refusal determines whether they will or they won't exercise that right.
So in other words, they can just say they have a buyer and they don't actually have to have it.
Well, no, they have to show you a valid agreement of sale that's been offered. And you would have a right to go through due diligence to see whether in fact it is a valid agreement of sale proposed.
And what would that vaguely look like?
Well, you would look at who the buyer is, you would look at the financial strength of the buyer, you look at in other words, if they were going to buy a school building and said they were going to turn it into a landfill, you could look at the zoning, you know they can't do that, so you would do all the things in your due diligence to determine if that buyer was really a realistic buyer, and whether or not there was any prospect that that buyer could actually go to closing on that piece of property.
But it's all in good faith. Like, at the end of the day, they could still back out from buying the building, yet we got put in the corner to make a decision to buy that building for $4 million, or buildings, rather.
If you don't choose to buy it, you're right. If there's a contingency they can't meet, the other agreement disappears.
Well, I guess more of the question is, it would be the only reason you would want to buy it back is if it was a charter school buying it, correct? In other words, if it was a,
The future, I don't know that.
but what I'm saying is that's the only one we would worry about, right? So if it was a private business that was purchasing it to move their business in there, why would the district want to buy it back? Right? So the only thing what we're trying to do, what we're worried mostly about is charter schools, right? Ultimately, right? So and that's what we're saying here. So, I mean, I guess you could hypothetically think they're going to buy this building, they're going to fix it up, and then they're going to spin it off and sell it to a charter school, and then we're going to be stuck making a decision in 2 years from now.
And then they'll be out of a school and have all their 450 kids on the street.
I just think,
So,
I think,
Two for a steal. It's buy one, get one. I mean, give me a break.
Oh, BOGO.
I think that, I mean, we know that we've looked at this, look, the finance committee looked at it, we've been haggling with what to do with Milford. There is, the cost to renovate it was astronomical, at least according to the numbers that we looked at. We have nothing to do with the building. They could renovate it for much cheaper because they don't have to do the same things the public school systems has to do. So it's an incentive for them to buy it, renovate it. Now they own it. We get to use the fields. It's not an eyesore to the community out there any longer. We don't run the risk of something happening. And if charter schools come down the pike, we're going to be sitting here having much deeper discussions about what to do as a district than whether or not we're buying a $4 million building back. I think anyway.
And I just want to say, our kids spent about a dozen years with Faith Christian kids and other children in the non-public schools doing different sports and different events and things like that, and I couldn't wish for a nicer bunch of new people coming into our district and helping make it better. And to your point, Keith, using something that's there as a public asset sitting vacant right now. So it's a wonderful group of people.
Okay, sounds like it might be time for our roll call vote. Okay. So do I hear a motion on the sales agreement for Faith Christian Academy?
We already have motion and second on the consent agenda.
Okay, excuse me. Okay. So now, pardon?
Just read the motion.
Okay. Approval of the purchase and sale agreement between Quakertown Community School District and Faith Christian Academy to sell Bucks County Tax Parcel Number 23101-12001, Milford Middle School, and Bucks County Tax Parcel 2315-108 to Hicken Valley Elementary School.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Kern?
Yes.
Mr. Akmanowitz?
No.
Ms. Weed?
No.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. McCucci?
Yes.
Mr. Diliberto?
Yes.
And Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-2.
Okay. Next is the
Welcome, neighbors.
Pardon?
I was just.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, welcome, neighbors.
Told me Donald Trump would be president. I wouldn't have.
Next is the Act 1 Budget Opt-out Resolution. This will also be a roll call vote. Resolved that the Board of School Directors of Quakertown Community School District makes the following unconditional certifications. The school district's various tax levies and other revenue sources will be sufficient to balance the school district final budget for the next fiscal year 2019-20 based on maintaining current tax rates or increasing tax rates by an amount less than or equal to the Act 1 index applicable to the school district as calculated by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. This conclusion is based on the school district's preliminary budget or other information available to the school board. The applicable index for the next fiscal year is 2.7%, and the school board will not, for the next fiscal year, increase the rate of its real estate tax or any other tax for the support of public education by an amount that exceeds the applicable index. The school board has to date and in the future will comply with the rules set forth in School Code 687 for adoption of the school district proposal and final budgets for the next fiscal year. The school board understands that the school district will not be eligible to use Act 1 referendum exceptions for the next fiscal year. So we'll proceed with the roll call vote. We have the motion ready.
Somebody has to, if they make the motion second.
We've already done that.
We did it for
You want to do
everything.
discussion for this? I don't know if we need it.
I do.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah.
My apologies, we should have a
Well,
discussion.
In the finance committee, we actually spoke about the fund balance, and I'll take you back to the discussion last year, which was you wanted to have a relatively healthy fund balance, and it looks like, and although our audit is not yet complete, it looks like our fund balance at the end of last year would be $15.9 million. That's correct? So we would maintain a fairly healthy budget. And the administration actually stated to us that there would not need to be substantial changes if we opt out. So they felt fairly comfortable with the budget, the way it sits financially today. And so I think it's a different flavor than what we experienced last year, where there was a lot of uncertainty. And I advocated strongly for leaving it open because at the time we were doing some furloughs and there was a lot of other uncertainty, where I think right now we're fairly healthy from an operation standpoint. Am I not correct? And therefore, I don't think we have to, I think we can look at it a little differently than we did last year, so.
Any other discussion? Okay, let's move forward with the roll call vote.
Mr. Anderson?
Can we be clear, though, on what yes or no means?
Yeah, we were confused last year.
Yes.
Those of us knew.
Yes is you are voting for the budget opt-out resolution as presented.
You're voting to limit our tax
So if you
increase.
say yes, you're going to eliminate any additional exceptions.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Good. I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson? Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Kern?
Yes.
Mr. Akmanowitz?
Yes, Act 1 is enough for me.
Ms. Weed?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell?
Yes.
Tucci?
Yes.
Mr. Diliberto?
Yes.
And Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Motion passes
Oh,
unanimously.
my God, the first
I can't
9-0.
believe
Woo!
Alrighty, that brings us to the rest of the fiscal consent agenda. This is approval of rack sound contract for the pep rally at homecoming in 2018. Approve the contract with Anything But Costumes, Inc. for the high school play, which is Arsenic and Old Lace. Approve contract with J-Line Dance Crew for their performance at Richland Elementary. Approve a housing contract for the high school band trip. Forecasts Analytics customer agreement. Approve award musical instruments purchase and service program RFP to Music and Arts. Approve Bucks County Intermediate Union Cooperative Services fuel bid. That is the fiscal consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve it as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Anderson, second.
I'll second.
Ms. Mitchell, discussions.
Mr. Shaw, can you explain F a little bit to us? That's the music purchase.
We're actually going to look at Dr. Hoffman.
Sure. So if you remember, we've had a number of presentations about music in recent meetings. And one of the conversation pieces last year that came up, we had a member of a community organization who came to share that our instruments were in disrepair, and at that time, the board had asked me to look into whether or not there was something I could do to provide them with new instruments. We went through and looked at the instruments that were in kind of the worst shape and would be unable to make it to the traditional curriculum cycle to be repaired. Yes, but actually, interestingly, no French horn showed up on the list for whatever that's worth. But so we actually went in and went to all the schools, not just the middle school. There are some elementary schools that don't have the instruments they need. And then recently, tubas were added to the list because it came to our attention that there was an issue with tubas on the school bus. So after spending a lot of time trying to figure out what instruments could best serve our students, this was the list we came up with, and we decided to go to bid for it because the actual price, if you were to just go out and buy it on your own, was close to $90,000, which was not an amount of money that I had set aside. So these are the bids that came back, and we'd like to award the bid to Music and Arts. They had the lowest bid, and they also offered some additional benefits to the school, including some scholarship to students who might want to start an instrument but can't afford one, and things like that. So the rest of the information is on there for you, but that's where that came from. So that's coming out of my money already budgeted for. It's no increase to you, just out of the curriculum resource budget.
Buy a nice car for 4 tubas.
Or Dave Ochmanowitz's car for 1 tuba.
Hey, I'm the same. My car would be 1 tuba or less.
Okay.
It's okay. Don't be ashamed of, I'm not embarrassed about my old car.
That's not outdoors.
Poltergeists? Any further discussions? Okay, all in favor of accepting the fiscal consent agenda as presented, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Moving on to public comment on the facilities consent agenda. Okay, the facilities consent agenda. We have approved the capital improvement plan from Dewey Engineering, and you'll find the information on board docs for that. So do I have a motion to approve the facilities consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
I'll
Ms.
second.
Mr. Ochmanowitz and Ms. Mitchell. Discussion? No discussion?
Actually, I had a question, just out of curiosity. So when they're doing the assessments, is there like a criteria that we're giving them to say, we want to model it after one of the existing schools as far as improvements are concerned? Or are they just basing that on wear and tear of normal equipment?
They have their own model. They actually just did this at Penn Ridge School District, was where we sort of stole the idea from. And they actually have 10 different rating from 0 to 10 on their criteria. Something that's a safety concern is a 10, something that's, this would be nice to get done, not sure it's an immediate need, is a 1. So they go through every single school. They put this together, and not just for that year, they'll also, based on the outcome of their analysis, project out for the next 5 years, everything that we need to be planning for and thinking of ahead of time. And then in addition to that, we can even use their service if we so choose, if we have to put together specs or anything of that nature to go out to bid.
Okay. And is that kind of like the ultimate goals? They kind of put together like a 5-year plan as far as they kind of keep the budget level?
Yes, so the board approved last year a $1 million line item annually for capital maintenance, and this is what we're going to use to determine how we spend that $1 million every year. And what we would do is we'll take it to the facilities committee at the beginning of the year, we'll talk about it, make sure this is the list, and then we'll go out to bid and get the projects done.
Thank you.
One of the things we struggled with as a committee there was a lot of asks constantly, and it sort of came up. So we had really no way of prioritizing what's nice to have, what's not nice, and this was kind of the outcome of that. Zach, right? Is that correct? I mean,
Yeah, it'll really help us prioritize, but it'll also help us plan for the future, so we can start thinking now about what we need to do in 3 years and start factoring that into our budget. And just because you have $1 million every year, you might know in year one, you might only have $500,000 worth of projects, but you know in year 3, you got 1.5, so you can stock that extra $500,000 away and prepare for year 3. So it really helps you build together a long-range plan for the district.
And it was another ask of ours, from the board, was that we didn't have that. And there was things that were creeping up, such as the roof at Trumbowersville, or, the HVAC system that's kind of wobbling at QE and those kind of things, and so.
And the way the system rates them, too, is really, I think, excellent, because it takes safety into consideration. So you might have something that's rated poor, it's not a safety issue, that can possibly wait. That's all factored in. Whereas you might have something that maybe doesn't look as bad now, but it's a safety issue, and, that needs to be taken care of sooner rather than later. And it factors all of that in. It was a pretty eye-opening presentation that Dewey did on that, and I thought it was an excellent system.
Yeah, I like the idea. Thanks.
Okay, any further discussion? Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Public comment on the human resources items being presented for a vote tonight. Okay. On the human resources consent agenda, we have professional staff, unit pay, support staff, substitute staff. Do I have a motion to accept the human resources consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Akmanowitz, second.
Second.
Mr. Jackson, discussion. No discussion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Public comment on the Office of Teaching and Learning items being presented for a vote tonight. Can you come up to the podium, please?
Hi, Michelle Henry, Richland Township. With regard to the Office of Teaching and Learning, I think the 2019-20 course studies are being approved. So my comment is just that it was my daughter that spoke up here earlier tonight, and I thought that took a lot of courage for her and shows you how much she really cares about this topic. I know maybe for some people it's fluff or a joke or I don't know. I know that it was hard for her to come up and speak, and thank you to the people, the very few people that actually said something to her as she walked away, because when you're in 8th grade, that's pretty hard to do. I'm going to quote Mr. Jackson, who made a comment a few weeks ago at a board meeting. He said, "What I look at it as is simply the ability of this district to provide another curriculum, another program for our children. If the students are choosing to take those classes, that's what they're thinking. That's what they want to do." And he said that on September 27th, 2018, and he was specifically speaking about strings and band. But I thought, that's interesting that he says that, because I'm assuming if he thinks that way, that he would think that way about more than just strings and band. The students did speak, the students did show what they were thinking, and the students showed what they want to do. I have to be honest and tell you that Julia and I both thought that when we saw the course program for the upcoming year, after what happened, and 58 kids signed up, after receiving a letter, which I do have a copy of the letter that I'm going to hand out so you can read it and see what the kids got. I was surprised that there was nothing about French in there for next year. So I don't know how to get any answers, because I'm told by Dr. Harner, go to the school board. I'm told by the school board, go to the education and curriculum meeting. I go to that, then it's like this circle, but no one ever wants to give an answer. I've heard board members in the past say, why French? Why not Spanish? Why not another language? But those same board members spoke about strings and band and said, I look at it as when we can offer more choices to our students, that it's a positive thing. So I don't understand how someone can say, why French? Why not Spanish? But yet when it benefits the district, you pose it as, but we're offering more choices. It can't be both ways. You're limiting kids that want to pursue French in college. You're not letting them do their, you look at what roadblocks do we have in our curriculum for college and career readiness. You have a huge roadblock, a huge one. 58 kids signed up to take that class. The German teacher at Strayer is dual certified in German and French. She teaches, I'm not sure, probably 2 or 3 sections of German 1, maybe 2, I don't know. A section of German 2. The rest of her time, she's teaching geography. Why can't she be teaching French? It would only cost the books. I don't understand. After French was canceled, and again, those kids were not told anything by the district. It was a disgrace. It was embarrassing. The kids nothing was said except an email sent to parents. After that happened, a strings teacher was hired, an SRO was hired, and things are great. But if the bottom line is, if you guys really wanted this to happen, it would happen. So I just want to say in regards to that course offering for next year, I do think it's a disgrace that the choice is not there for kids to learn French. And to me, it's like saying to someone who's really into science, saying, well, we offer biology. What's wrong with biology? You want to learn chemistry? Well, we offer biology. Just take biology. We offer biology. I don't care that you want to be a chemist. We offer biology. If it doesn't make sense in science, it doesn't make sense in world language. And we are the only district that doesn't offer it in Bucks and Montgomery County. So let's get on par with the rest of the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Henry.
Thank you, Ms. Henry.
Thank you. Is that true? We're the only ones that don't offer that? I'm just asking.
I know when my kids wanted to take French earlier on and it wasn't available. I think they had just canceled it. The most that I feel for you is the fact that you actually had a spark of hope, and then that was, something happened and they had to rescind that offer, and that's tough. But there's certainly, we can't offer everything. You don't always get what you want. But there are some amazing, I don't know if you've looked at some of the alternatives to learning a language on your own, because I'm trying to learn Spanish on my own. I had a little bit in school. So there, although I would appreciate WIP and, Eagles is better than learning French. But there are some alternatives. I don't know if you explored that. But yeah, I feel your pain.
I do want to reply just because my name was directly appreciated. I'm not offended that you brought my name up. You quoted my words probably precisely. So just to the audience members and to the board in general, the way the comment was phrased is that I was supportive of strings, and Ms. Henry's confused why I'm not equally supportive of French. The simple answer is I did not advocate for creating a strings program. I did not advocate for creating any program.
Not a program, remember?
No, thank you for the semantics. As a board member, I've never advocated for any program, be it an after-school club, a course, a program, a curriculum. I've not advocated for anything, only because I rely on the administration, Ms. Hoffman especially, because this is her realm of purview, to bring us what they believe is the proper courses of study. And they brought strings to our attention, and I thought it was wonderful. It's ways to expand classrooms. You quoted you gave the quote very nicely. I can't speak to French because it has been brought to my attention. That's the simple answer to why it has been done. As to this program was understood, and your daughter may not know, but my daughter sits, okay, and she also said something about, oh, they're going to have French next year. I think she did, yeah. So as to the program of studies, though, the program of studies is from 9 to 12, so it doesn't fit into the Strayer mold that you're speaking about. So even if it was there, the program of studies wouldn't have acknowledged it anyway, so. Understood. So, but the question is up to the board if they want to probe deeper is to the administration, not to the board.
Right. And Dr. Hoffman, could we get a little bit of background on why
That's
it
what
was
I was gonna
offered,
ask.
and then it was teed up, and then it was put on schedules, and then we unfortunately did not offer it? I would just like to know how the series of events went down, so we can provide an explanation to the community,
And
please.
while it may not influence our decision-making, I'm curious, as my initial question, are we the only district in Bucks and Montgomery County who don't offer that range of world language?
And I thought that there was supposed to be a lack of interest in it. I had no idea that there were 58 people who wanted to take it.
So I can address a couple things, but hopefully, in fairness to me, I was certainly not prepared to talk about this tonight with numbers or information. So
You
if
can
you'd
come
like-
back with us another time
Okay,
if
but
you
I can
want.
share just some general information about the history of it.
Please.
So typically, when new courses are brought to the board, they're brought to the board from student interest, principal, inquiry about a new program, or from my office directly through the education committee. Over the years, we have had some interest in students taking French. We had a couple students who took French Cyber, which is an option that we actually have a few students who are all the way up through French 4 Cyber that we've offered to them in the past. And at the request of the board last year, I did look into offering French. And after bringing that to the education committee and moving through, we made the decision to include it in the list of choices for students. We offer, as you can see in the program of studies as an example, a number of classes at the high school that we don't end up actually running, but they are offered to students. And we have to go back from time to time and say, sorry, we don't have enough interest in this class to run it. And that's never an enjoyable thing to do, but we are bound by number of teaching staff we have, the number of periods we can run classes, and of course the cost of these classes. Once we had the students enroll, and like I said, I don't have the numbers with me, but I did just pull up the course request tally in Power School, and I only see 29 students who selected French, so I'm not sure if I could go back and look at numbers that I have in my office and get back to you with those numbers. But I'm speaking, excuse me. And so I would be able to get that for you at a later date. But anyway, what happens sometimes is students do express an interest by survey or even in their course request document, and then when they actually go to load the schedule, it doesn't work. Some students that may have been interested in French may have gotten their PSSA scores back and they needed to take reading instead, because we do offer the choice, but then if you need to take a different class, then we would change that out. Or perhaps they needed a different class that only ran the same period French was going to run, and so it wouldn't fit into their schedule. I don't do the middle school schedule, so I can't tell you exactly how that happened. But then at an education committee meeting, I did come back, share where we kind of were, what it would cost us in terms of another teacher. So I do understand that we do have a teacher who is certified in French, but it's not, you asked, we compare this to strings. It's not as easy as just saying someone can just teach those two classes. Then I need to hire another teacher to teach the classes she's not teaching. And then the next year, it's French 1 and French 2 in the middle school, and French 1 at the high school. Then the next year, it's French 1 and French 2 in the middle school, French 1 and 2 at the high school, French 1, 2, 3 at the high school, French 1, 2, 3, 4 at the high school, French 1, 2, 3, 4 AP at the high school. And while right now, in some programs, I have the capacity to do that. People might not like it, but I could ask a teacher, hey, would you be willing to split between buildings? Or could you, teach German part of the day and French part of the day? I don't have that for the out years. So in year 2 and year 3, I'd be looking at having to hire additional staff, which is not something that we believed at the time last year as an education committee was a fiscally responsible decision based on the number of students and the interest.
If I recall, didn't you bring even to our attention a French textbook?
I didn't ask for permission for one.
No,
Oh.
didn't you bring one for us to look at that you were considering using? Was there a foreign language textbook that we looked at a few months ago? I thought it was French.
You approved a German textbook.
Was it German?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. All right.
But I did run the numbers by the Education Committee in terms of what it would cost for us to have the number of teachers that we would need, the cost of any resources and those types of things. And at the time, it was determined that it wasn't a fiscally responsible move to move forward with it. At that time, there's lots of classes that we would love to offer. We get student interest in new classes and electives all the time. And unfortunately, we just have to make the decision, what we can offer and what we can't based on all those factors I just mentioned.
Thank you, Dr.
Hopefully that
Hoffman.
helps a little bit.
I do want to point out that that was the same argument that I made with regards to the string department. And so I find it slightly ironic that we're having the same discussion regarding
Can I answer
French. And
that?
so, but I do want to say, Ms. Henry, I thought, I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know we didn't offer French because it was offered when I went here. So I was surprised to hear. I was just curious, when did we get rid of French? Anybody know?
I think when our son was interested in, so.
2008 or 9. Yeah.
Was it 10 years ago? So the question I have is, is Mandarin that much more popular? Is it more popular?
We have.
Not every 4 people on the planet speak it, I think.
Well, I'm not saying in the world is it popular. I know it's popular in the world. I meant in Quakertown, Pennsylvania. I'm just curious. Is there 100?
And we do have one teacher that travels between multiple buildings to do that. And I guess the thing with the strings piece is we had the additional staff member who can cover that. And as I shared at previous meetings with the plan, I'm not looking to add additional staff to continue students the choice to take a stringed instrument versus, one of our other instrumental music choices. In this case, I would be saying to you right now, I need you to add another teaching staff member if you would like to offer French. So that would be a full-time FTE. And last year, when we went through this, the decision of the Education Committee was that we did not have the money to put another FTE in the budget for French specifically.
Thank you, Dr. Hoffman. Okay.
There's a question on the
President.
Yeah. At the next comment, there's another public comment in there. You can come back up again, okay?
Do we have any plans, given the interest, I guess? Are we saying that indefinitely we're not going to offer French, or just at this time, I guess?
So my statement to the board at the last meeting, or my recommendation, was not to offer French as a live class. Obviously, you have the right to direct me to do something, just
for now.
Well, just a quick caveat to what Mr. McCucci spoke about regarding the similarities between this discussion and the strings discussion. Do recall that the reason the strings program came about is because we voted to hire a new teacher, essentially retain, whatever term you want to use. We made a decision to retain one staff member that the administration was going to cut. So they had a body with a class that needed to be taught, essentially. And the administration came back and chose strings. So
if you remember the conversation?
Sir, yes.
Do you? Do you remember the conversation that we had in June? Do you remember how it went?
We left it that the administration and the teachers should get together and decide how to use this body.
We were asked by the administration, can we defer the way we wanted to utilize that? And we agreed to that.
Okay.
Right?
We didn't say defer. We agreed that Dr. Harner could use that body as he sees fit.
At the time, it was mentioned that it could be choir or band. There was no mention of strings. And in fact, there was no mention of strings until we were at the board meeting when we found out. Actually, I lied. When I went to my kids' orientation at Trumbowersville was when I first heard that they were offering strings. It was never brought up before that. And then there was a public email that came out or a blog. So no, I think they're totally different. But I think there's a lot of similarities in the fact that regardless of the semantics, and I wasn't here for the board retreat, but the semantics we want to use, it was the same principle that we're applying to offering French, which is If you build it, you're going to need more people to sustain it, is all I'm saying. And it could start out with 12 people or 10 people, but if it multiplies over time and it expands the district, one person's not going to be able to hold that up.
Yeah, I don't think the number one person actually was even involved in the strings. I don't think 3 years out, we were still going to be with one person. I thought even maybe I'm wrong, I thought the administration alluded to the fact that going forward, they need another staff member in 2 or 3 years. I don't know what the number was, but they.
Right,
What we said was through attrition, we would replace that
But it's still
position.
investing,
But my
right,
point is,
in that.
you will still be investing cash
Right, but-
into a program that will continue to grow over time.
So I'm hearing we need a strings teacher that can teach French.
Right, but my point was simply that, regardless in this particular case of the issue, whether or not we should have done strings, again, my point was simply that we told the administration to retain a certain staff member. In this particular case, with French, there is no such staff member. We'd have to hire one.
We may have one.
Right, I don't understand.
Well, she's also teaching geography. They just said she's teaching geography too, right? So I understand that maybe she's not filled with French, but she's teaching geography, and I don't know what her schedule looks like outside of those two classes.
Well, look, we got a lot of people teaching other things that they're certified. A lot of
That
multiple
is for
certified
sure.
teachers out there, I'm sure.
Yeah, so I guess, help me understand, so if there's 29 kids interested, that would be definitely a large class size. So what's our average class size for, world language, I guess?
I can get that to
I
you
mean,
another time, but
yeah,
I
I'm
can
sorry
tell you,
to
I
put
mean,
you on
certainly
spot.
at the high school, if I had, to guess, most of the Spanish classes are in the high 20s or low 30s even.
Yeah.
And the other piece of this to consider is just the fact that the geography class is cultural geography, which is why it's taught by a world language teacher. It's not just typical geography, just to clear that up. But I think it's important to recognize that some of the conversation that we're having around French, we could also be having around a lot of other classes. So we just have to be careful that we look at all of the pieces of the interest before we move forward with adding something new.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, feedback, obviously, it's important, but just understand that unless it's brought to our attention, we won't always know all of
Right.
those things, and because it was brought to our attention tonight, is why we're asking the questions.
Sure.
So if the average class size is I don't know, is it impossible to think that we can't add one section? I know that we would need future planning, but we couldn't add one section of French to cover the 29 students who are interested in that?
Well, then I need someone to teach one section of another class, so I still need another teacher, and then you're going to need French 1 at the high school too. So it's really at least a half-time person that we're hiring. So.
So we're talking, right,
And a travel period for the teacher is just a period that they don't teach at all. So for her to travel from the middle school to the high school, she can teach one less class to begin with. So now I need another period too. So I can go back and see if I can find those notes from last year's ed committee and share them with you if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like this to, don't get me wrong, I'm not someone who is like really passionate about this, but it sounds like we do have, I am French, maybe I should be, I don't know. But, just kidding. But I think we should look into it a little bit more. I think it's something that we should offer, especially if it sounds like other schools do, it would be good for our students.
I just find as our language offerings have diminished, now we call it world language instead of each language by itself. Because we used to call them, we had Russian and we had Latin and we had German and we had Spanish and we had French and we had something else by satellite. But as the number of languages got reduced, instead of calling it foreign language, now we call it world language. And I just think it gets smaller and then we call it world language. I just find that amusing.
One of this is a historical point, at least from my history, only goes back to 2014 here. And the restaffing plan, Latin and Chinese, expanding our languages into Latin and Chinese were part of that. we were able to find a high-quality Latin, or a Chinese teacher. She's awesome. And we're with over 100 students now enrolled. We couldn't find a Latin teacher. Not a one.
Could that be because it's a dead language?
Well, we had more students request Latin than we did French. I can tell you that. We had over
Okay,
75
that's
students want Latin. I
interesting to
couldn't find a
me.
teacher.
Yeah.
Right. I couldn't find a teacher.
My father would be proud.
Okay. Let's move forward with the Office of Teaching and Learning consent agenda.
It's coming.
It's coming.
At the end
Yeah.
of the meeting,
No, but did we,
not on this.
did we ask for
public comment
after she
Yes.
gave her public comment?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. There's other public comments in the meeting if anybody would like to come up and, like, we're in the middle of doing this, and I promise you she can come up and talk again. Ryan? Oh, okay.
That's what I was.
Come on up. But she's already been up once, though. Was it?
The daughter wants to speak. She's saying her daughter wants to speak.
Oh. Okay. Okay. Come on up. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Mr. Derek Pfeiffer sent my mom the exact number of how many students signed up for French 1, German 1 and 2, and Mandarin 1. And I know for sure that French 1 was 50. It was 58 students interested that are now currently in 7th and 8th grade. And then how can you decide that French 1 is not a recommendation for a live course when 58 students signed up to take French 1? The district keeps saying there is not enough interest in French, but 58 students signed up. So how is that not enough interest? That would be about 2 classes. So, and what teaching certificate is needed to teach cultural geography, and how did French 1 get offered and put on 58 of our schedules if there was like no plan after that? And then I'll hand out a copy of the.
Just give them to Mr. Garten. He can pass them around. Thank you.
I'd like to, if I could, talk about overarching, here you go. Sure. The overarching for faculty and priorities for staffing and all that. I like Dr. Hoffman to kind of give a larger overview of our strategy beyond what we talked about during the finance meeting. Most of the board members were there in finance, and as we talked about our declining enrollment, approximately 3 to 4 classrooms a year in elementary school, because of the incoming class being smaller, is keeping our end strength of our faculty the same and using that to reduce class size in the core areas. That was the philosophical approach that we talked about, and I believe there was a support to do that during the board meeting or during the finance committee meeting. Also, I know there's on the program of studies, there's an issue about that may be of concern, and I wanted to have Dr. Hoffman talk about that because it may give an appearance that we're trying to go backwards also in staffing, which is not the case.
Thank you. So I just wanted to do a clarification of the reduction in credits for some students at the high school in math and science. And if you were at the last education committee, this will be redundant, so I apologize. But we were looking to find a way to meet the needs of our students in terms of their math and science, since many of them are accelerating, beginning math earlier. At the middle level, they are getting, up through calculus by 10th or 11th grade. And they may want to try something different their senior year, or they are doing an advanced biology class in 9th grade, chemistry class in 10th grade, maybe AP physics in 11th grade, and similarly would like to try maybe something in a different field their senior year. So we were looking to reduce the number of credits from 8 to 7, have to take 3 science, have to take 3 math, must complete biology, chemistry, and physics, must complete algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, but beyond that, some flexibility for students. And one of the things that came up through that conversation was a potential concern from staff that the reason we were doing that was to reduce the number of staff members that we would need in math and science. So I just wanted to publicly share that that is not our intention. We don't believe that that will be the case. And if anything, a lot of the conversation centered around making our science class sizes smaller. Our teachers have for years been giving feedback that the lab classes are too large, presenting us with lots of information about lab safety and the number of students that should be in biology, chemistry type labs, and trying to bring that number down a little bit. So from our forecasting, of course, we don't know right now exactly how many students are going to pick to do the 4th year of math or the 4th year of science. We know all technical school students already only need 6 total, so we can take them out of the mix. But we'll be keeping track of that data over the next couple years. But based on what we know right now, we don't believe that we would need to reduce staff, and that isn't part of what we're planning to do in any way. We would just be looking to keep those same staff members and lower class sizes in those classes. So hopefully that helps clear up anybody's concerns that that this would mean that we need fewer staff.
Thank you for the clarification. Mr. Wayne, you would like to make a comment? Oh, okay.
Wow. Very efficient.
So is this the numbers, right? Is this what you're talking about here, these numbers? Is that what that whole, everything was about, this stuff?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was looking at that like a couple of days ago.
I don't think so, no.
You said it was like 8?
The only change there is, well, there's two changes there. One is increasing the health requirement from a 0.5, a half a year of health, to a second semester of health. So I have a 1.0 in health. And that's to address some of the issues that have come up out in the community, post-Parkland, drugs, vaping, a whole bunch of other things that we're not covering in our current health curriculum. The other one was in math. We've required 4 math and 4 sciences for years. And this is to give the students the flexibility to take only 3 maths or 3 sciences and 4 of the other.
7 total.
And 7 total, because for example, right now when it comes to regular math, we have 14 students in 6th grade right now taking Algebra 1. We have about 120 students in 7th grade taking Algebra 1. And then and a lot more taking it in 8th grade. So by the time they get up to their sophomore year, they're already in calc. Just like in world languages and Spanish this year, we have about over 30 10th graders that are in AP Spanish. 10th graders taking college level Spanish. And so that's the kind of thing that we're trying to give the students more opportunity, and clearly not to reduce staff. The idea is, per the Finance Committee earlier, is to take any kind of, keep our end strength in teachers the same and start working toward reducing class size K1 and 2, and then moving up to the high school level because of some of the larger class sizes, like in our sciences. Back when we had our professional development day in September, or was that, no, it was October? September, on the word walls when the departments met, the science department, the PE department talked about their exorbitant class sizes and asked us to put that up there as a challenge that I take as a challenge that I got to work on.
Well, it sounds like, too, like the folks who are sort of accelerated, then until this change, almost were forced to take yet another class, and now you're reducing by 1. So if you've already exhausted your math, so to speak, you're not stuck trying to get some other crazy class that you probably don't even want.
That's correct. I do think a number of students will still select another math or science if they are inclined to do so. They will still take AP Anatomy. They'll still take AP Stat. They may still select to do that. But right. just an option.
Okay, moving on with the Office of Teaching and Learning Consent agenda. On the agenda, we have the approval of the planned course statements and approval of program of studies. Do I have a motion to accept the Office of Teaching and Learning Consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second. Anderson. I'm sorry, who seconded that? Mr. Akmanowitz. Discussion.
Is there any way, like, so we talk about these things, are we, I'm just using French as an example, but another thing, do we do like small business plans at all for when we want to expand stuff so that we can look at like what the enrollment would be and what it would cost to institute something like that down the road so that maybe in a year from now we can offer something or?
You looking just for a sample, or what do you?
Yeah, I don't know. We call them business plans where I work, and so when you want something new, you have to kind of put together a sort of, what you know about it, what the costs associated be, what we projected out for 10 years, what the cost would be over a 10-year period, how many folks would be affected by it, what's the return on investment type of thing.
To what degree are you looking for that? Every single course?
Well, no, I was just thinking about the big ticket items. I mean, when we like strings being one of them in the future, and what that would look like.
What would you call big ticket items? I mean, strings is the big one everybody's on mind, but creating a French program, is that a big ticket item?
Maybe it's associated with, maybe what we do is go back at that one graph that you showed the other day where it sort of builds over 6 years and sort of.
The 6-year cycle.
Yeah, see if we could somehow tie into the dollar amount to those kind of things.
Okay,
I don't know.
we'll bring that into the finance
just trying to
committee and
think
show how that matches up, the finances, the
Yeah.
business part of the 6-year cycle.
Yeah, and that way we
we'll-
could say, with 100% certainty it would cost us, in order to institute it, it would cost us, I don't know, $3 million would be the investment that you would make. I have no idea.
Maybe you
Yeah,
have a
so
better
in other
idea.
words, if we said, give us an example proposal for French, instituting French, and if it was $1.98, it would be a no-brainer,
Correct.
right? And if it's 1.98 million, okay, we can delay building maintenance and do French, so it's like that. If you at least, it's like, yeah.
I don't know, I mean,
What's the
we're having this
magnitude?
discussion, but I don't know what the math,
We can bring something up that's a
Equals in my
a
head, and-
standard, routine way of presenting and through finance and the education committees.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next is public comment on policies and program items being presented for a vote tonight. The policy and programs consent agenda consists of acknowledging the class of 2018, and no, I'm not going to read all the names. Approve truancy services agreement with the BCIU 22 for the 2018-2019 school year. A PIA resolution regarding basically fairness in level competition, and all that information is in board docs. So do I have a motion to approve the policy, programs, and consent agenda?
I'll motion.
Ms.
I'll
Mitchell.
second.
And Mr. Akmanowitz.
On fire tonight.
Yes, you are. Discussion.
Dr. Hunter, can you elaborate on the PIAA resolution we're bidding on? Because I'm not sure if how many people are really aware of what this is.
What's going on around the state, especially in the western central portions of the state, and a little bit in this area, Lehigh Valley, where athletic directors, superintendents, high school principals who are into the policy side of things is getting some traction finally from the state legislature on changing the PIAA rules because of how parochial schools tend to win a vast majority of the championships because they have no boundaries where they can recruit students from. I'm aware of probably once every couple weeks, I'm hearing of a student, one of our athletes, who or from a parent, more often than not the student itself, him or herself, is being recruited away to a private school, parochial school, charter school.
Do you have something against Notre Dame?
Notre Dame High School, yes, sir. Notre Dame, the college, no, sir. But anyways, the PIAA has been basically protected by, in changing, they've been protected by the legislature, and then now it's gotten a lot of traction. This summer, I went to a legislative hearing in the Capitol on it, and two of our Bucks County, Senator Tomlinson and Senator D from the, I forget his last name, but a House rep from Ben Salem area. They're the co-chairman of the statewide committee, and because of them holding the hearing, the PIAA took a couple initial steps on leveling the playing field. The resolution here finishes the deal, is by separating in final championship competitions that the parochial schools play in their own championship, and the public schools over here, the traditional public schools over there. Down in Philadelphia, they got a charter school right now that is a basketball powerhouse and magnet school. And so how does that, it doesn't make it fair for the folks who are limited by their own boundaries. Their geographical boundaries are 6 municipalities.
Is this resolution from a template that we obtained, or do we draft this ourselves?
It was something that's been going on around the state, and we modified it just a little bit on the wording, but most of it's from what's going on, and there's probably 100 of them that have been approved out of the 500 districts.
That's the other question I was going to ask. How many other districts have supported this?
A lot.
These questions are just so that the board understands the background and why
It's just
why you want to have interest, whether or not
the genuine playing field out there.
whether or not you're interested or not in this resolution. I'm just bringing that up.
Yeah, so basically, I remember going to school with somebody that was down in Cincinnati and like mold, they recruited and literally went right to Notre Dame and big Catholic schools. So you're talking about today, Quakertown would have to compete against the big Catholic powerhouses and things like that.
Correct.
To get anywhere, and we always lose because it's unfair competition. So that's what you're talking about. This is just saying we want to. What does this actually do? Does it just extract?
It's just a resolution. This is your position on this public policy issue that would go into the archives. Once it's approved, if you all approve it, we would share it, put it out on Penn Lake so that other school districts and others across the state would be aware of your position.
So this private schools as well as the public schools will continue to play each other throughout the season.
Correct.
However, wrap up, there will be a Catholic League champ and a Public League champ or something to that
like
effect.
That, yes, sir.
Okay.
And
it is because the non-public schools can recruit their students from all over the state. They're not in the borders.
You could go from Quakertown to Philadelphia. I mean, if you're good enough at playing football, there's schools that will come, take you out, give you free tuition, boop, put you in school, and then they have instead of our little area of catchment, Quakertown, they have the entire
Regions All-Stars.
4 counties to choose the best 40 kids.
I can tell you my daughter was recruited by some private schools. Goalkeeper extraordinaire. She obviously didn't go, but it happens. We have personal experience with it.
And it happens often.
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we have some information items. Excuse me. There's the board briefing book on board docs, and there is the Quakertown Community School District Parent Community Safety Committee update, which appears in board docs as well. Dr. Harner, do you have any comments about that or anything that you want to say regarding that? Okay. All right. Any new board business? No? Okay. And this brings us to the general public comment section of the meeting.
I'm Vic Bartholomew, and I live in Milford Township. I don't know too much about this whole French thing, but I have to agree with the mom here because every year, our taxes go up. And then this district had no problem building a second turf field, but you can't find the money to have a French program? I don't understand that. And it doesn't make any sense to me because you're supposed to be here for the kids. And if you have an interest, and things do start from a small thing, just like the Chinese, they learn Chinese. When I worked at the school district, that program was very small. Now it's big. If these kids are interested, and they might bring other kids in, you're going to expand that, and it's going to be good for the kids, good for the community. If you can spend the money on an athletic field, a turf field, you should be able to spend it on something tangible like a child. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartholomew. Any other public comment? Okay. We have calendar items. Thursday, November 1st, there's a Facilities Committee meeting in Community Room A. Thursday, November 8th, we have an Education and Curriculum meeting in Community Room A that starts at 6. And then the regular work session, school board meeting at 7 here in the Community Room. And then Thursday, December 6th, we have the Facilities Committee meeting, Room A, starts at 6. And at 7 o'clock, we have the reorganization and regular voting meeting here at the DSC. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Oh, so moved.
Mr. Achmanowitz.
Second. I didn't get to say anything.
Ms.
Second.
Weed, all in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.